All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Social Media Marketing Society members. We are thrilled to have you here today. I am not Leslie Samuel. Um, Leslie is on an airplane right now, so I am excited to fill his amazing shoes and bring our. Oh, we, uh, there we go. Make sure that is turned off. See, that's why we do the testing. Okay. I think we're about ready to go. I can see that we are live. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Social Media Marketing Society. This is Allie Kelly, and I want to welcome you to a special training today on activating the storytelling flywheel to increase marketing momentum. Your instructor today is Park Howell, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a moment. In this session, storytelling expert Park Howell will guide you through the art of storytelling and how to captivate your audience. Learn the secrets behind finding your brand's unique story and effectively incorporating it into your marketing strategy. Using the storytelling flywheel format, Park will show you how to craft entertaining, interesting, and educational narratives that will build loyalty and leave a lasting impression on your audience. And at the end of this session, you'll be able to create and use your storytelling flywheel to use it both online and offline to engage your audience. Let us know what you think after the session in our feedback form. You'll see that link below the video. Now, let me introduce your instructor. Park Howell is known as the world's most industrious storyteller, having grown purpose-driven brands by as much as 600%. He is a 35-plus year veteran of the advertising industry and now consults, teaches, coaches, and speaks internationally to help businesses, sales, and marketing leaders excel through the stories they tell. He is the host of the popular weekly Business of Story podcast, which is ranked among the top 10% of downloaded podcasts in the world. Park published Brand Bewitchery in 2020 to help you use his proven story cycle system to craft spellbinding stories for your brand. And in 2021, he co-authored The Narrative Gem for Business, a short 75-page guide on how to use the foundational narrative framework of the ABT and but therefore to make you a more confident, compelling, and persuasive communicator. You can find Park on social media as at Park Howell or his website, businessofstory.com. Park, thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is now yours.
Oh, well, thank you, Allie. And Leslie's going to be jealous that you did such a beautiful job with that. So I appreciate the intro. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate borrowing some of your time out of, I know, an incredibly busy schedule. So I promise it will be well worth it because I am going to give you some tools, techniques that you can use immediately to help you stand out in this very loud, noisy world. Now, as Ali mentioned, I've gotten the moniker of the world's most industrious storyteller, actually given to me by a couple of my clients. And I liked it so much, I thought I would take it because the training that I do is really based on me and 30 years of advertising career, working with different ad agencies. And I ran my own ad agency in Phoenix, Arizona for 20 of those years and really transitioned into business storytelling, coaching, consulting, and teaching internationally in 2016, although I had been practicing it for almost 10 years before that. But I love sharing what I've learned about story, and I call it the applied science and bewitchery of storytelling because there is a true science to it. And by applied science, I'm talking about the three narrative frameworks that we coach here at the Business of Story. The and but therefore, which is what I call the DNA of story. If you get the ABT down, and I'm going to show you examples of how to do it, that you will absolutely connect with your audience immediately and get them to lean into your story. And I'll show you why that works. We'll also teach the 5 primal elements of a short story, where you can use an anecdote, a real, truthful story about the impact you make in the world to make your business points for you. And then finally, the 10-step story cycle system. As Ali mentioned, it is our brand strategy creation program that has proven itself, that grew some of our clients by as much as 600%. And we're going to be talking just a little bit about that, but we're going to focus on the other two more today. And those frameworks lead to the bewitchery of storytelling. And you know what that is when you hear a great story, how it can make you laugh, make you cry, give you goosebumps, make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. You have a visceral reaction to a good story well told. In the business world, our biggest challenge is we don't use storytelling. To me, the most singular, powerful tool in your business content marketing toolkit that goes unused. So I'm going to show you how to use it. You're in good company because I have, over the past almost 15 years now, worked with lots of major brands around the world to teach them the concepts of our three frameworks. And the one thing that I've learned about this is quite often people will approach business storytelling very tactically without a lot of strategy behind it. Okay, thanks, Park. You've taught me how to use the ABT. I'm going to just start using it everywhere, which is great because it works everywhere, but you want to have a strategy to it. And then they're like, all right, Park, thanks for teaching me the 5 primary elements of a short story. I got my anecdotes now. I'm just going to go out and use them. Okay, and that will work, but you need to have a strategy behind it. And then our 10-step story cycle system, great for crafting those long form presentations, long form content, brand story narrative, and it is totally a strategy. So what I've done is brought all three of these together because I saw this void in people just thinking of storytelling tactically without actually having a strategy to it. And this is where this whole profound idea of the flywheel effect hit me upside the head. One night, it just connected the dots between my story cycle system and what Jim Collins introduced in his 2001 book, Good to Great, this concept of the flywheel effect. So let's just look at that Jim Collins approach first. If you haven't heard about the flywheel effect, the idea is to have a business strategy, which includes everything from operations to sales and marketing to customer service in order to get this flywheel effect going. You'll see that outer ring is, of course, we are out there trying to knock on the door of strangers to let them get awareness for our brand and what our offering is and do a good job of attracting them in. And then we got to engage them with the stories we tell. They become prospects that we quickly convert to customers. And then as we delight those customers, they become promoters, right? They start sharing your story with their world. So the more and more I started researching this flywheel effect, I thought, this is so much about storytelling too. So you might be saying to yourself, well, Park, I've never done a flywheel effect for my business, and that's okay. Something you might really want to consider doing. I'm going to show you how you can activate your storytelling flywheel today. While you're actually, maybe perfecting your other flywheel, this is the story flywheel specific. Now, one of the customers that Jim Collins points to, one of the first people he trained about the flywheel effect was Jeff Bezos of Amazon. And they've used it, to grow to be one of the largest, most profitable, iconic brands in the world. And they basically followed this same step. Now, one of my favorite quotes from Bezos is this: your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I would like to update it a little bit. And I would update it and say, your brand is the story people tell about you when you're not in the room. Therefore, this is why you need to enact this storytelling flywheel concept, because it provides the strategy you need to help actually make your storytelling tactics work for you, work easier, get this momentum going on this virtuous cycle of a flywheel, because the idea is to launch it, get it moving, and then it starts building momentum all on its own. But how do we transition that organization's flywheel into a storytelling flywheel? Let me introduce you to another guy I admire greatly. His name is Bob Berg. He is a remarkable sales coach, and you probably are familiar with this statement that he coined almost 20 years ago. And it is more true today than ever. And that is, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to Those people they know, like, and trust. That's when my aha moment went off. And it's about building your know, like, and trust storytelling flywheel using the three story structures from the business of story. So now I am teaching a lot of my customers about the strategy of this flywheel effect. So, first, let's just walk through it real quick. You've got to be known for something. What is it that you do differently and more distinctively than anybody else? That you could also mean maybe one of your customers. Maybe you are in the throes of helping a customer get super focused what the core problem is that they solve for an audience, and therefore what is their unique position in the marketplace? What are they known for? And I always like to say, man, you got to stand for something if you're going to stand out in this very crowded world we're in. So, what do you stand for, and how do people know and see you in that light so that you become their go to offering? Then, as they come in, right, you're attracting these strangers in. You want to become immensely likable. You don't want to bombard them with a bunch of boring features and functions lists and data and charts and graphs that so many people, especially in the business to business world, do, because that stuff is just boring. It's not likable. It sells nothing. In fact, when was the last time you were bored into buying anything? However, if you come across an offering that is ideally suited for what you need right now, and you start doing your due diligence, you start engaging with them, and they become likable and how they work with you, and then they deliver on the promises that they make in their stories, then it leads to your trust, your repeat business, your word of mouth marketing. That is the most powerful form of advertising there is, right? Free word of mouth marketing that talks about your experience with the brand, which makes it that much better known, right? So you think about Bezos. Boy, Amazon's done a pretty doggone good job with this on their operational flywheel. But now I want to challenge you. What is your storytelling flywheel? And how can you use our frameworks to really activate that flywheel? So, first, the and, but, and therefore agile narrative framework is where you become known. Now, I have been at social media marketing world, what, last 7 or 8 years. I've been presenting our business of story training, a lot of it focused specifically on the and, but, and therefore. And if you don't know that much about it, then a place that you can learn more about is just simply go to businessofstory.com/ABT. But in short, the ABT, and I'm going to show you some examples of it, helps you use the three forces of story in a very quick way to be able to clarify your message, your brand story, so it lands right the first time, every time in your prospect's brain. The ABT is not a story necessarily in and of itself, but it is a story structure that once you know about it will completely blow your mind. It then, once you become better known, leads into then what I teach, the 5 primal elements of a short story for big impact. These are the little anecdotal stories that you tell and your customers tell that talk about the outcome that you make in their life. Very important to remember that your stories are not about what you make, but they are about what you make happen in your customer's life. This is what makes you immensely likable, which then leads, of course, to the trust factor. How do you scale your story? How do you get your customers being those promoters by sharing your story with their world? So, like I mentioned, while we've got 3 frameworks, including the 10-step story cycle system, today we are simply going to focus on the and, but, therefore, and the anecdotal stories of the 5 primal elements of a short story. The whole idea is to help you become better known, liked, trusted around the world, and so that you are either benefiting from, or you are creating this word of mouth marketing repeat business for you and your customers, and you have a proven strategy that you can easily follow. It's only 3 steps. The ABT to get you clarified on what you stand for in the world, so people know why you are the most urgent offering for them. the likability factor of great stories, customer human interest stories that talk about your output, your outcomes that you create for them, that builds that trust, and you get them to share it with your world. Let me show it to you in action. Now, actually, and this actually takes me back to the very first time I presented at Social Media Marketing World, which I think was 2016. This is Andre Martin Hobbs. Andre was in the audience that day, and after my presentation, he came up to me and said, Park, I run an auto dealership in Quebec, Canada. I would like for you to help us with our story. And I said, okay, tell me a little bit more about this. And in the corridors there, he says, well, we're literally a used car dealership, and our number one customers are Canadians who have horrible credit. So the bells went off in my head. I started telling myself an anti-story about Andre and his industry. And I was thinking to myself, oh, great. Here's someone who's just taking advantage of cash-strapped people who are dying for the freedom to own a car. And I don't really think this is the kind of brand I want to get involved with. So Andre said, I'm going to call you in 3 weeks to get things going. And I thought to myself, 99% of the time when people say that, they never call. So I just figured Andre wouldn't call. He did. And I go, oh boy. Well, I did my discovery with him, and I learned something about Andre, that he wasn't just running a used car dealership to help outfit credit at risk credit buyers in Canada. He was doing it to help them repair their credit. He was simply using a car dealership as a mode to help them repair their credit. And he told me, what do I ultimately want to be known for in Canada? He goes, we want to be known as the number one place in Canada to repair your credit, which I thought was really interesting because he actually didn't even have car salesmen. He had financial planners that would work with the people that would come in to get a car. They would go through their finances, set the budget for them, and actually put them in a car that they could afford. And then they did something really remarkable. Over the course of the next 6 months, they would follow up with that car buyer and family every month. How are you doing? Are you making ends meet? Anything we can do to help out? So they literally, their goal was to help them repair their credit within 2 years, because in Canada, once you do that, then it opens the world up for a lot of other opportunities. So I thought that was really cool. He wants to be known as the number one place in Canada to repair your credit. So then we use the and but therefore to help create his brand premise or his core position in the marketplace. And it reads like this. He's speaking directly to his audience, his car buyer. You want the convenience of owning a car and wish for the freedom it provides. But you have bad credit. There's the problem. There's the plot twist. Therefore, you can immediately begin repairing your financial standing in a car you can afford at Prêt Auto Partes. And that's my butchered French for, in English, meaning ready, car, go. This all then led to his unique value proposition, again, at the top of this flywheel of Prêt Auto Partes is your vehicle to financial freedom. That has become their calling card. That is what they are known for. And this is what has absolutely catapulted their growth. Again, starting back in 2016, they have now become the fastest growing and largest car dealership in Quebec. And he is also franchising the concept out throughout North America. But now let's move into the factor here. So what they do is Andre was really big on whenever he hired someone, they had to be comfortable telling their story, whether they're an employee, a colleague that is helping with the sales, or even the customers coming in. He just pulls in thousands upon thousands of customer testimonials. Here's an example of Pascal Brodeur, an analyst, and just kind of what they do on social media. Quick, fun shot. Meet Pascal, one of the few boys on the team. He is adored by his colleagues and cherished by his clients for his humanity and listening. Discover his wise advice and his alter ego, Yolande, in our TikTok videos. Anyways, they have all of their people are being introduced online through their social accounts and through their websites. and they're sharing these very quick little likable stories. They also, of course, are featuring their customers. And in some cases, our customers will record video testimonials for them of what a wonderful experience they had to continue to create that trustworthiness. And as you can see, this is a fun group of people, not a single car salesperson in that group. They're all people that are really bought into the overall story of we want to help Canadians repair their financial freedom through a vehicle from our auto dealership. Now, is it working? Check out the trust barometer from Bird Eye, which is, I guess, kind of a version of LinkedIn or when I'm dropping my brain here. It's a reputation management reporting website, right? Well, check out Prate Auto Parte. They've got 882 5-star reviews. And I could tell you that Andre goes out of his way to make sure that people experience the Prate Auto Parte story and become a part of it. So they're known, your vehicle to financial freedom. By the way, the interesting thing about this, they become so liked and trusted that he told me a story about an older lady who had to travel, or didn't have to, wanted to travel 8 hours by bus into Quebec so that she could work with Andre and his team and get a car that she could afford to start repairing her credit. That's the kind of trust they build. And that's where they really share these stories all over the place that then leads back to being better known. So you can see how this storytelling flywheel is a virtuous flywheel in that it gains momentum, it gains speed, and it starts taking off a life of its own. All you have to do is plug in the stories as you go. It's a 3-step strategy that now, again, clients aren't just willy-nilly using our structures here and there and wherever. They actually have a planned approach on how to do it. Um, Although we're not talking about the business or the story cycle system in my book, Brand Bewitchery, it was where we started with Andre. We took him through the 10-step story cycle system to arrive at this position in the marketplace and even to arrive at his storytelling culture, which leads to his flywheel. And like I mentioned, he is now the fastest growing, largest auto dealership in Quebec, and he is franchising throughout North America. You can actually hear him tell his story. This was recorded several years ago. I'm going on 450 episodes now, so about 4 years ago, where Andre talks about how he found his story. You can check it out on the Business of Story, show number 235. So as you're thinking about this, let's apply it to you quickly. What would be your and but therefore that makes you known for your specific attribute in the world, what you deliver? Mine, of course, is the world's most industrious storyteller, helping leaders of purpose-driven brands and their people excel through the stories they tell. Business of Story is my platform. It's the only thing like it in the world. That's what I'm known for. And then the likability comes in, of course, with all of our podcasts we do, the social posting, the speaking gigs, the keynotes, and so forth. So be thinking about that for you. And let's actually show you an ABT in action. And then you could kind of replace this maybe with some of your own thinking about yourself. We want to start with a statement of agreement. So this is generic to you all coming here, but this could be the ABT for this presentation. As a business leader, you want to connect deeply with your colleagues and customers. And if they truly knew what you stood for as a brand, then you would stand out from your competition. But people may not think of you as an outstanding offering because you simply don't know how to clearly talk about your company. Therefore, become known as the unquestionable market leader when you focus your brand story on a singular problem solution narrative that your audience will immediately get using the ABT. All right. Set up problem resolution, statement of agreement in that and statement. Then you introduce the problem that you solve for with the but, and the therefore becomes your call to action. Here's the way forward. Now, you heard me mention earlier that the ABT works because it uses these 3 forces of story. That is agreement, contradiction, and consequence. And we've learned that our pattern-seeking, problem-solving, decision-making, buying limbic brain loves to receive messages in this order. It doesn't have to work for it. It's a problem solution brain, anyways, because it has one job, and that's survival of the being. So it has to be able to digest problems quickly and then sort out what do we need to do next? Fight, flight, freeze, or is there an opportunity here? All in the name of the survival of the being. It's the natural way our subconscious limbic brain works. But in business, we rarely speak to it that way. We are trying to speak to the logic driven brain. And Jonathan Haidt said, one of America's foremost sociologists, said our brains are story processors, not logic processors. So here's the first tool, the and but therefore, that you can use to get super focused on a brand narrative, on a story, on whatever communication you have going on. And this is the beginning of launching and activating your storytelling flywheel. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into the ABT. We've got the 3 words. And is that statement of agreement, but is that statement of contradiction, and the consequence is your way forward. When you create your and statement of agreement, I want you to not place you at the center of the story. I want you to place your audience at the center of the story. Get super specific who your number one audience is. All you have to do is look at your sales receipts. 80% of your customers, or I'm sorry, 20% of your customers make up 80% of your sales. It's the Pareto principle, proven over and over and over again. So look at the 20%. What do they all have in common? And there you're going to find your number one audience you want to talk to. What do they want relative to your offering? And why is it important to them? That's your setup. That's your statement of agreement. You are demonstrating that you understand who they are and that you appreciate what they want and why that's important to them. But then you introduce the problem that you are going to solve. Why don't they have what they want? Because of what problem? What's standing in their way? You want to build as much contrast between that and statement of agreement and that but statement of contradiction, because that's what really lights up the limbic brain that asks, okay, what do we do now? Therefore, how will you help them get what they want? Or how are you uniquely positioned to help them get what they want? When you go through this, this is how you build an ABT for your brand position to launch that storytelling flywheel. Or maybe you've got a campaign going out there and you've got an ABT that sets up the focus of that campaign. And then you build you underscore what you're known for, and then you build that likability through the stories you tell, and then you enhance that trust by scaling your customer stories out to new prospects to become better known, liked, and trusted. Now, I learned the and but therefore from my good friend now, Dr. Randy Olson. Learned about it over a decade ago. He teaches it in the science and academic world. He's a Harvard PhD evolutionary biologist turned USC Film School grad. And when I read about it in his second book called Connection, Critical Thinking Meets Hollywood Storytelling, that's where he introduced the ABT. And from a brand standpoint, I'm like, wow, is this like the holy grail to get us super focused? Is this what can launch that flywheel? And so he and I have become fast friends over the years. I've done a lot of training and work with him and a scientist and academics that he works with. And then I've translated that into the business world. And he and I have co-written a book, came out a year and a half ago, The Narrative Gem for Business, quick little 75-page guide to help you craft ABTs in all forms to launch your storytelling flywheel. Also, if you want to have a fun sort of deep dive into the ABT, listen to my show, 400th anniversary episode of The Business of Story, where I share with you my 10-year journey learning about the ABTs of storytelling and all the people that have had an impact on me about it, and all these different people and how they're using it in different industries and different parts of the world. By the way, I got to throw out a little bit that I was also named last year, for 2 years running, the #1 business storytelling podcast by FeedSpot for 2022 and 23, hopefully 2024. So if you're not an avid listener, I hope you will, but here's a great show to start with. Let's take a deeper look into this storytelling flywheel and demonstrate that, it's just not for the big guys. It's for the little guys like Harmon Corgis, which is a national corgi breeder in the panhandle of Texas. run by a husband and wife team. They're fantastic. So they went through a quick sprint session with me, and we want to look and say, okay, what is it about you? What do you want to be absolutely known for? Because they've been doing this for quite a long time, very, very reputable, but their business had been starting to get cannibalized by other less, credentialed breeders, and believe it or not, even show breeders that get rid of their top stock and then just kind of liquidate everything else so that the owner is not actually getting probably a dog that is uniquely matched to them. They're like Harman Corgis is like the corgi matchmaker, if you will. Here's their and button, therefore, that helps them get super focused on what they're known for in the industry to launch their storytelling flywheel. You are eager to expand your wonderful family with a cuddly corgi pup. And if you find the right pooch with a proper temperament, then you'll be blessed with a lifelong companion. That's their statement of agreement. You get your prospect nodding yes. That's exactly what I want. But you're suspect of dog peddlers because you or someone you know has been burned by unscrupulous breeders or sketchy backyard puppy mills. Therefore, imagine welcoming into your home a healthy Pembroke Welsh Corgi with the right energy level and temperament matched perfectly to you and your family by Harman Corgis. For prepping you and your home to puppy school, to health and nutrition, to becoming part of our active Corgi community of owners, Harman Corgis has been providing ideal companions to thousands of families since 1995. So we write that down. It's a very, very short story using the uh, uh, the the three forces of story, the and, but, therefore. But what we're trying to do here is take a very long story and boil it down to their core category offering, which led us to Harman Corgis, your Corgi companion. And it works beautifully because people are looking for a Corgi to be their companion. But in order to find the absolute right companion, they need a Corgi breeder to first be their companion to really understand what kind of dog they want, need, and temperament wise, and then how they can outfit you with that. So Harman Corgis becomes your Corgi companion. You go there to help find the Corgi that then becomes your ultimate companion. They are immensely liked because they share these stories about the process, about the people that come in and get it. They solicit all kinds of testimonials and get them, but they're also doing a really smart thing, and they have built a community around all of the people from around the country that come in and buy their corgis. By the way, they also have a 100% lifetime guarantee. If at any time ever you want to return that dog, they will take it back and give you all of your money back. Talking about building trust. And they just have this amazing community then of lots of different Corgi owners that come in and vouch for them. You say Harman Corgis is the place to be, which of course leads them to become better known as the Corgi companion. And it all continues the storytelling flywheel. And what's beautiful about this too, the idea of them being the Corgi companion, that is aspirational for the brand too. That means they have to really, really deliver on that. And they do it through their storytelling and their community development that builds that trust, that makes them even better known, more liked, and even greater trusted. So you can see how this works. It's a 3-step strategy. So you're not out there willy-nilly sharing stories and you're wondering why your storytelling isn't working. This is a way to launch it, activate it, measure it, and build consistent momentum with your marketing through the stories you tell. Now, this is such a powerful, the ABT is such a powerful way to really get known, to get your message focused. The biggest challenge people have is they're like, Park, I can do this for everybody. And I solve this problem, and I solve this problem, and I solve this problem. And we all know when you try to appeal to everybody, you end up appealing to nobody. So this is a way to get your story, your brand narrative strategy, your campaigns super focused on one singular problem solution dynamic. I bring up my good bald friend here, Christopher Lockhead. He is a legendary Silicon Valley marketer. And if you've ever looked for like an incredible book on brand development and category design to own a category, I push people to play bigger. It's one of my all-time favorite books. Highly, highly recommend it. Well, I was on Christopher's show, his podcast, a year or so ago, and I introduced him to the ABT for the first time. He had never heard of it. And then he tried it. And then he was blown away by how it enabled him to focus these messages and the engagement he got, how it launched his storytelling flywheel. Let me just play you a quick clip from that show. Actually, it came in after that show, after he had had some experience with the ABT. Here's what he had to say.
So you with the ABT, in category design, we have this thing called a POV, a point of view, and it is simply structured very similarly to that of the ABT, which is essentially, and this is such a profound insight, it sounds like it's nothing, just like the ABT. In a point of view, it goes like this. Nobody buys a solution until they have a problem. And so a point of view starts with framing, naming, and claiming a problem. And when people understand the problem / opportunity, then they become interested in the solution. And then, of course, the third piece from a POV perspective is how your product or service, or your idea for that matter, you might not be actually marketing or selling anything, bridges the gap between the problem / opportunity and therefore the solution. Okay, so with all that said, why do I love the ABT? The ABT takes the thinking that we did around points of view and does a fantastic, legendary double click on it. And that's why the and button therefore model is pure genius. It allows you to relate to people. Then it gives them the but, which tees up the problem, and then the therefore, which points the way to the different future, aka solution. And it's easily rememberable. And if you start to play with it, as I have since you taught it to me, just like anything else, you develop some prowess with it, starts working. You're like, wow, it's almost weird how this works.
All right. So it's almost weird how this works. Here's what he's talking about. The very next day after my appearance on his show, teaching him the ABT, he used it in a tweet. And then he took a screenshot of it later in the day and sent it to me. Here's the first time, and this is a prolific content marketer, Christopher Lockhead is. Read through this with me. Most entrepreneurs would love to design a new category and build $1 billion business. But there is so much startup BS on Twitter, it's hard to know who to listen to. The therefore is implied. Meet David Sachs. He knows a few things, and I have call to action through his bit.ly link. In under 6 hours, Christopher experienced over 60,000 engagements with this one tweet. The first time he had ever used the ABT. Now he uses it all over the place, especially on his podcast. He says, I use it to set the framework for my guest coming in so that we have a singular problem solution dynamic that we are covering in that particular show, and we get to stay focused on it. So he starts like this little micro storytelling flywheel with each podcast. He gets focused with the ABT. He gets his audience to share, or his guests to share lots of stories to make their business points for them, to make that guest likable and his show even more likable. And of course, they deliver the goods on remarkable content that makes them a trusted go-to show, makes them even better known, and it moves on. But it starts by getting super focused. Now, you being a content marketer, you're going to probably say, okay, how do I actually use this in the content world? Well, LinkedIn campaigns, another fantastic place to use it. I was working with this big SaaS provider out of Denver, and they provide a platform for analytics for trucking, agriculture, and heavy construction equipment. They can be reading the equipment and give people real-time dashboards on the health and maintenance of each one of those pieces of equipment, and they are global. They're everywhere. So I worked with their sales and marketing team and taught them about the flywheel, starting with the and, but, therefore. And I like to use examples from their existing campaigns or social posts. Here's one, and a very important message about mental health awareness. It says here, to honor our employees around the world on March 4th, Trimble staff have a mental health day to focus on their personal well-being. In order to serve our customers, we must take care of our people, and that starts with work-life balance. So an important message, but it's non-narrative. You can place an and in front of each of those sentences, and it's just and. It never piques the interest of the problem solving, decision making, limbic buying brain. But watch and feel what happens when you simply make an ABT out of the same basic content. To serve our customers, we take care of our people, and that starts with a work-life balance. But life can feel chaotic for all of us right now. So now they're really inviting you into their story. Therefore, on March 4th, Trimble staff around the world have a mental health day to focus on their personal well-being. And then you've got a link to that goes in and talks about what they do. So this is just one example. The next month, I worked with their team through these 5 different countries. They would send me their content for their LinkedIn campaigns. I would not rewrite them, really. I would just reformat them using an and, but, therefore. So what happened was not because of terrific writing. It was they were sharing content with how the limbic, pattern-seeking, problem-solving, decision-making, buying brain likes to get it. Stay super focused to launch that storytelling flywheel. After we revised all their stuff in April, they had an over 400% average increase in engagement on the same campaign that they ran in March. Talking about an A/B test, talking about an ROI. This is the power of launching that flywheel with a purposely, specifically focused story using the and, but, therefore. One last example of this. Let's go back to the branding world. Bera, I learned after working with them, is a Scottsdale, Arizona-based international brand sentiment measuring company. They use AI, and they work with some of the largest brands. I mean, Nike, Coca-Cola, McCormick's, you name it. They work with them. And what they do is use AI to go and crawl social world out there and the news media online. And they get basically an EKG of how healthy your brand story is in the marketplace. And if you're going to change it, what do you need to change about it? So I went on their website. Excuse me one sec. Little tea to keep this voice going. And this is, typically, okay, what we believe. This is going to be a landing page about them. And it's got all the right information. For years, marketers have struggled to connect brand investment to business outcomes. Consequently, business leaders have been forced to play a guessing game based on incomplete, out-of-date data. So we developed the world's only predictive brand technology, the breakthrough you need to build brand equity, accelerate revenue growth, and drive enterprise value. So it's kind of narrative. It's not as strong as it could be. It has all the right points in there. It just has them out of order. As we have seen how the ABT works is very powerful. Here's how we reordered it for them. We don't want to start with the problem. We want to start with that shared vision of what tomorrow could be a statement of agreement, which is here. So it might look something like thriving brands connect brand investment to business outcomes. Then we introduce the problem. But most business leaders struggle because they play a guessing game based on incomplete, out-of-date data. Now our therefore is our call to action. And again, they have it out of place. And here's something that everybody does is right after that so or that therefore, they want to launch the brand. I'm asking you to not do that. Stay focused on your audience. This is what builds likability because you're speaking directly to them in how their limbic brain wants to get messaging. So we move this up front. This is what's in it for them, and the rest of it comes afterwards. Now you can build brand equity, accelerate revenue growth, and drive enterprise value with the world's only predictive brand technology from Bera. See how that works? Same basic content, just now reordered with how the limbic buying brain wants to receive it. And it places your audience at the center of the story, which actually does 3 things for you. I talk about the 3 forces of story of agreement, contradiction, and consequence. I've also learned within the ABT, when you follow it correctly, it builds, you demonstrate the 3 forces of trust building. And that is showing that you understand your audience, who they are, appreciating what they want and why they want that, and then empathizing with them as to why they don't have it. Understanding, appreciation, and empathy builds the trust that you need to move them forward. Funny thing again, it's in threes, right? It's the tripartite structure to stories: agreement, contradiction, consequence, understanding, appreciation, empathy to build trust. Act one, act two, act three, setup, problem, resolution. The know, like, and trust storytelling flywheel is a 3-act structure that's really easy to get going. So, what are you known for? Why do people like you and what you do? And are you the trusted provider? We're going to move into the like section now, right? I'm going to show you a quick video of 2 tech titans that you know very well. And after you see this very short clip, ask yourself, who do you feel like you like better? All right, here we go. Let me scoot my microphone over. We're going to dive in.
Some people here, but I don't think most people know that there was actually some Microsoft software in that Apple II computer. Do you want to talk about what happened there, how that occurred?
Yeah, there'd been the Altair and a few other companies, actually about 24, that had done various machines, but the 77 group included the PET, TRS-80,
Commodore.
and Commodore PET, TRS-80, and the Apple II. The original Apple II Basic, the integer Basic, we had nothing to do with. But then there was a floating point one where, and I mostly worked with Woz on that.
Let me tell this story.
Okay.
Woz, my partner, we started out with this guy named Steve Wozniak, brilliant, brilliant guy. He writes this basic that is like the best basic on the planet. It does stuff that no other basic's ever done. You don't have to run it to find your error messages. It finds them when you type it in and stuff. It's perfect in every way, except for one thing, which is it's just fixed point, right? It's not floating point. And so we're getting a lot of input that people want this basic to be floating point. And like we're begging Woz, please, please make this floating point.
Who's we? How many people are in Apple?
Well, me.
Yeah.
We're begging Woz to make this floating point. And he just never does it, and he wrote it by hand on paper. I mean, he didn't have an assembler or anything to write it with. It was all just written on paper, and he'd type it in. He just never got around to making a floating point. Well, this is one of the mysteries of life. I don't know, but he never did. And so, Microsoft had this very popular, really good floating point basic that we ended up going to them and saying, help.
I just love that example. I mean, you could feel the frustration, can't you, early on? I mean, when Gates is trying to tell you something from his logic-driven, neocortex brain, and we're just going, what? Get on with it. He includes a bunch of stuff you don't need to know about. Even Jobs gets so frustrated, he takes over the story. And then Jobs actually tells a story. And if you listen to that quickly, you can go online and find out on YouTube. When you go back and listen to it quickly, you'll find there's 2 ABTs in his story that set up problem resolution, and then final resolution that plays to that limbic brain. And he's likable, so that's what I want you to be thinking about. So how do you do that? Now, you started your storytelling flywheel. You've defined who you are, what you stand for in the marketplace by sharing it through an ABT. You get super focused on that singular problem that you're solving for. Now you want to up the likability factor. The way to do that is you don't have to use these big, long, convoluted story structures of the hero's journey and the Pixar way and whatever. It's these simple 5 primal elements to story. They are: start your story. And by the way, this is a real world story about a singular individual you helped to get something that they want, and you help them through your product or service. I want you to start by being super specific. When did this moment happen? When? Was it yesterday at 2 p.m.? Was it last Thursday? Was it the fall of 2023? The more specific you can be, what you're doing is you're triggering that limbic brain to pay attention. Because essentially what it's saying to itself is, oh my God, something must have happened because this storyteller is starting at a specific time, knowing that all stories are temporal. Something must have happened to this person, and I better pay attention to it so I would know what to do in case it ever happens to me. Again, my job is one job: survival of this being. So you want to give it a timestamp. Then a location stamp. Where did this happen? Use 1 or 2 or 3 descriptive words. Was it, a cold, miserable winter in Las Vegas in 2019? I don't know, but what you're doing when you describe the location very quickly, you're now lighting up the theater of the mind. So you're triggering the limbic brain with your timestamp, and then you're firing up the theater of the mind so that they can picture it. They are now becoming engrossed in your story as a participant. Then you introduce the one person in your story that this story is about. What is it that they wanted? Why was it important to them? But why didn't they have it? Lead to the action. What did they have to do to try to get it? Why wasn't it working for them? And then, of course, they found your solution and they had that aha moment, that surprise outcome that leads to your business point. So this is nothing more than an expanded ABT. Once you get the ABT down, once you literally know how to tell a story using the and, but, therefore, building that narrative intuition in your brain, then your stories are going to become much better. And guess what? Much more likable, much more entertaining by expanding it into an actual moment when something happened. When it happened, where did it happen? Who's the singular character it happened to? What happened? What was that surprising outcome? And what leads to the aha moment that makes your point for you? This is the likability part of your storytelling flywheel. You want to get this down because you are going to be telling these stories everywhere, and you're going to want to be capturing these stories from your customers and reframing them in this framework. Let me show you an example. Airbnb brand story strategy. Back in 2013, Airbnb came under fire for a couple different things. Their business model was growing, their organization was growing, and therefore had to start charging more for their accommodations. That pissed a lot of people off. In fact, they said, oh, great, now you're just for the 1%ers. Number two, people started looking under the hood at Airbnb and found that there was zero diversity, equity, and inclusion because they had been so busy just building the company, they hadn't really done a self-assessment of where they were in the DEI world, or DEI world. So they realized that they had to change this brand story and come up with this singular thing that they're known for, as you see right in that billboard right there, that you can belong anywhere with Airbnb. They wanted it to, resonate for the residences, the customers around the world. They want to make sure that the hosts bought into this so that they were always happy hosts for anybody that showed up at their home. And they want to use it as an internal story to let people know that they're paying attention to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and they want them to feel like they belong in their career at Airbnb. Beautiful, aspirational, core brand story around belong anywhere. So if I was their CMO and I was presenting this to the board of directors, I want to activate their storytelling flywheel by truly understanding that singular problem solution dynamic we are communicating about in the new refined brand story and logo. I wouldn't share one ABT that covers all three of those audiences, guests, hosts, and colleagues. I would probably start with guests, customers, because that board is more interested in sales than anything else. But then I would roll out an ABT for the hosts and one for the customer or for the colleagues. Here's how that customer ABT might read to set the stage for the storytelling flywheel to show them, what we want to be known for. There are people who want to explore interesting places around the world and wish to feel less like tourists and more like locals. That was actually a line that came directly out of their own customer research. And I use that in there because that's what I would do if I was their CMO. Say, I'm not making this stuff up. This is what our customers are resoundingly telling us. Here's the problem we solve. But typical tourism houses you in large hotels, promotes crowded tours, and separates you from the indigenous experiences you seek. Again, a basic sentiment that came out of their customer survey. Therefore, their uniqueness in the world, Airbnb accommodates explorers with authentic residences where you feel like you belong anywhere. So I love that. All right, that's one thing to be known for that. How do you show it in action to become much more likable as a brand and to bring more people in, from being those strangers to the prospects to converting them to customers to making them promoters through your know, like, and trust storytelling flywheel. Here's an example of what they did after they launched this Belong Anywhere. Airbnb went in on the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and they did an economic impact survey in both East and West Berlin to understand the economic impact the wall had coming down, but Airbnb coming in. Their numbers were amazing. They got all kinds of PR around the world. But in this process, as they were looking at it, they were starting to uncover all these human interest stories, and they made a whole flurry of these short mini documentaries that show their whole brand position that they're known for, Belong Anywhere, through the stories they tell. They don't have to pound their chest. They just show it in action in the world to become vastly more likable. This next micro documentary is about 1 minute, 17 seconds long. I want to show it to you, and then let's break it down and how it uses the 5 primal elements of a short story and actually is built on the ABT framework. Here we go.
Berlin, 1987. My father was a guard on the west side of the Berlin Wall, while another man guarded the east. Eventually, the wall came down, but even after moving away, my father carried a piece of it with him. While I grew up, it lingered over all of us, a barrier between him and the rest of the world. I decided I would help by taking him back to Berlin to show him the beautiful place it had become. When we arrived, the stranger who answered the door became familiar. The guard who patrolled the opposite side of the wall now welcomed us as a friend. After that, things were better for my father. Airbnb. Belong anywhere.
All right, a beautiful example of the anecdotal storytelling that makes you become vastly more likable, especially when it's focused on what you're known for. In Airbnb's case, belonging anywhere. So let's take a look at it. You can see it's not a very long script. You could sit down and share this with someone in probably about 45 seconds because that video takes some time to establish the look and feel and so forth. But you can see these are not big, long-winded stories. There's the timestamp. There's the location stamp. And of course, they had illustration here so they could really play to the theater of the mind. There's your central character, her father. The interesting thing about this particular story is you could actually view the central character from 2 different points of view. You might be relating to the father, or you might be relating to the daughter narrator. Either way, they are speaking directly to you in your heart and inviting you into the story. Look at that. Timestamp, location stamp, central character, setup. I mean, the first 4 words are your first 3 elements of your primal elements of storytelling. Then they get into the action. After moving away, he had a bit of PTSD, so she wanted to take him back to show him what a beautiful place it had become. Great story in and of itself, but now the kismet of life comes in that makes it even more interesting. When we arrived, the stranger who answered the door became familiar. The guard who patrolled the opposite side of the wall now welcomed us as a friend. Is there any better way to illustrate and underscore the brand narrative that Airbnb is known for of belong anywhere? There's a beautiful example of showing it to you in action. Now, where's the and but therefore? Well, you could insert an and right there. That first paragraph is just simply act 1 to get everybody on the same page of the story. They even use the word but that shows plot twist, but contradiction. But here's the problem we're solving for. The therefore is implied down here. Therefore, after that, things were better for my father. Also, another way of saying, and he lived happily ever after. So a famous storytelling trope that our brain loves. We're opening a story loop with that first chapter. We're inviting them into the action of chapter 2 to expand and amplify that story loop, and that which begs the question, how does this story end? And of course, it ends on their moral of the story, which is their brand narrative being known as belong anywhere. So you use those 5 primal elements of story, and this is how they do it. What are they known? Well, we know since 2013, belong anywhere, and they have not strayed from that singular story problem solution dynamic at all. They share it everywhere, and they invite their people, their customers, their hosts, and their colleagues to share it everywhere. And they even have this really incredible Instagram a page where it's Airbnb experiences, where people, again, guests, customers, hosts, colleagues can share their experiences, good or bad, with Airbnb to build more trust and then, of course, make them better known, more likable, and that storytelling flywheel continues. I really wanted to focus on the and, but, therefore, and the anecdote. The story cycle system comes in when you're really trying to figure out what your overall brand story is. Maybe you've already got it. A lot of times I'm hired by customers that go, Park, we like our brand and our brand where it's going. We just don't know how to talk about it. We don't worry about the story cycle system. Then we dive in and first establish that ABT to get super focused on what they're known for to become the go-to provider in their category, and then share anecdotes over and over and over and over again to become more likable and better trusted. And oh, by the way, as you become more likable through those stories, you have to deliver on the promises you make in those stories, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but that's what grows the trust. Finally, how do you fan the flames of your customers sharing your stories? Well, you can do it lots of different ways. You go out and ask them for it. You get them to like and post on your different social postings out there to scale your story, to demonstrate their trust for you. That then makes you better known, liked, and trusted. And one platform that I like to use now is called Story Prompt. It comes out of London from my good friends, the Hammers out there, husband and wife team that created it. And it's a really simple, fun, easy way to collect video, audio, and even quick little written testimonials so that you can actively go out, solicit their stories from your customers. They can share them very, very easily with you, so you can build a library of these stories that you use in your content marketing to further your likability and your trustworthiness. That makes you, of course, the known provider in that category. So that's a lot. How do you do it? What's your brand story? Start with an ABT. Get that thing written down. Get it super focused on what you stand for and the problem you solve. Share anecdotes. Demonstrate your impact in the world through the stories about outcomes that you are helping your customers achieve. And then you want to activate that trusted portion of the flywheel by getting your audiences to easily share their experiences with their worlds, essentially scaling your story. So to activate your storytelling flywheel, number 1, craft ABTs to focus that message. Number 2, share anecdotes that make your business points. Number 3, use the story cycle system to guide your long form communications and presentations. Again, why? Because it gets you out of product selling and product messaging into solution storytelling, the stories your audiences actually want to hear. And then finally, capture customer stories on platforms like Story Prompt and share them with your world. Have a real strategy about how you share those out. So, Ali, with that, before I go to my contact list, why don't I keep that up for people to take a look at, and we could open it up for any questions they may have out there.
Amazing. Yeah, if you guys want to take a quick screenshot of this before we move into Q&A, you are welcome to do that. And let me get us over into where we need to be here. All right. So we're going to transition to Q&A now. This is the final portion of this event. You can ask any questions related to storytelling that you would like. This includes asking questions about how to apply what you've learned to your business. If you've seen all of this stuff and all these examples, but you're still unsure how to apply this to your specific business or your industry, ask us. This is your opportunity to get some kind of personalized advice from Park. And while you're getting your questions in, I want to encourage you to fill out this session feedback form. You'll see the link here below the video. Alrighty, so I actually have a question for you, Park.
All right.
Do you find that there, I know like you had that example with the car lot person from Quebec.
Andre. Yep.
I had to laugh because you're like, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. And then later you actually pronounced it right.
Oh, good.
So I have a little bit of a French background.
How did I say it? That was correct.
It's prêt
Play.
prêt auto parte.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
But and you said you were hesitant at first because you thought it was kind of something different than it really was.
Right.
So my question is, are there industries or professions where you think people might struggle to write up an ABT that's going to work for them? And what advice do you give them?
Yeah, I don't think there is an industry because the whole goal is to be able to stand out in any industry. So it always is doing that soul searching, whether they're doing it for themselves or they're doing it for a customer. What do they stand for? What is it that they're out to thwart? Now, for me,
Mhm.
the villain in my story is boredom. How many times have we sat through boring webinars, boring presentations, read boring books? God, look at almost any advertisement out there. Boring, boring, boring. And so my whole nemesis is I want to overcome boredom through stories and show people how to use the applied science of storytelling to lead to that bewitchery. I think you can do this, and I've seen it done across industries. The only people that seem to really struggle with it are friggin' attorneys. They are all so caught up in their heads already. They already think they know everything that they just don't even want to deal with it. And hence, there's not a lot of differentiation in the attorney world.
That's
So
so interesting.
anybody that I've worked with, has spoke with, taken through workshops, I find the lawyering world to be the most difficult to work with.
Yeah, I was thinking of asking you a question somewhat related to that. When it comes to professions where it really does seem like everyone who works in that profession really does the same thing. Like there's not a lot of differentiation. I was thinking like real estate agents
Uh-huh.
or like tax preparers or things like that. So like this is more of kind of a broad branding and
Yeah.
marketing question, but like how do you help people identify what differentiates them from others in their industry?
Well, it's a great question, Ali. It goes back to that whole question. What do they stand for? So I'll give you a good example. I had accounting. I had an accounting firm first. Now, let me go way back. I had a guy who handled all of my accounting for my ad agency, CPA. And he would do the taxes. And even when we got audited, he would come in and do the audit. He was several years older than I was. I looked at him as a father figure because he really cared. His name was Steve Luster, and
Hmm.
he actually cared about our family. He knew our kids' names. He knew, Michelle's wants and needs and our financial wants and needs. And without really even working branding, it wasn't a branding position. He stood for me as utter integrity as a father figure. So we had him for decades, decades. And then he retired, handed me off to a firm that didn't give a crap about us. They were like just whatever. Were in the throes of doing taxes for everybody else, and they were a commodity. And because they didn't give a crap, I fired them after a couple of years because I felt like they just, I don't even know if what they're telling me is right. And then I found Lisa up in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I live now, who's a sole proprietor. And now she's about my age. So she's a sister figure who actually cares about us. In those two cases, you've got CPAs that actually stand for something, the humanity behind the numbers and what it means for our family versus the commodity of now let me just crunch the numbers and put it out there. So I do believe that you can stand out in any industry, and it's your job as the brander, be it the business owner or be the agency, to help highly commoditized industries, clients in highly commoditized industries, to build scarcity around their brand by standing for one thing, right?
Yeah.
So you do that by getting super focused on what they stand for and then quickly communicating it using the ABT to be clear, compelling, and concise in that brand positioning.
Fantastic. All right, I have a question from Finn, who asks, "What would Park say about Gloria, an immigration attorney who helps people achieve their American dream?"
Ah, that's a great one. So Gloria obviously stands for something beyond her. She's like Andre. The
Yeah.
vehicle to help the Canadians repair their credit was a used car lot. She is helping immigrants realize their American dream through the vehicle of being a lawyer, but she has a goal. She just simply uses her lawyering as the exercise or vehicle to help them get what they want. We worked with a company, is a translation company. My brain is just fried right now with all these French words. They're out of Davis, California, and they have offices in Warsaw, Poland, and Mexico City, and now in New York City. Avant Page is their name, and they asked us to come in and help them with the clarify their brand story. We first use the story cycle system to then activate that storytelling flywheel, and they're doing the exact same thing that Gloria is doing. Their specialty is translations in government and healthcare for immigrants. And their whole goal is also to help immigrants realize their American dream. So
Hmm.
they go out of their way to make sure that their translations are accurate and authentic, and they have to charge more because of that. But they attract clients, customers that need to have stuff translated that care about the same thing. They became very much of an activist brand to be able to help immigrants realize their American dream through translation services. But they don't talk a lot about what they make, translation services. They talk about what they make happen to clearly differentiate themselves in the crowded, commoditized translation world. And they were on my show a couple times. You can look up Avant Page at thebusinessofstory.com and listen to an episode when we first launched their brand story, and then an episode from last year, about 4 years after launching their brand story, what it has meant to their business. But it sounds like they're kind of in that same position as Gloria. We had to carve out, what do they stand for that is greater than just doing translation work? And of course, in their case, helping immigrants realize their American dream as well.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love this question from Holly. She asks, "How do you convince leadership to stop posting blah 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 word salad talking points on social?"
Oh, you can lead a leader to knowledge, but you can't make him think. That's what I would say about that. You got to show it to them. That's what, because I run into the exact same problem, Holly. Sometimes, I get leaders saying this storytelling's woo-woo stuff. That ABT is too simple. It can't possibly work. What sort of witchcraft are you trying to teach here? Oh, well, let me show you a case study like I did with you, Trimble. Here, their LinkedIn campaigns from March. And we increased engagement by 400 freaking percent by simply changing the framework and the format of that copy. And by the way, that copy wasn't loaded with a bunch of bullets, features and functions. And to your point, blah, 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 blah. I always say B2B marketing should not stand for boring to bored, but most of it does. This is how you can stand out, and you can help your customers stand out, starting with that ABT framework, to show them. Give them examples of it in action, and the engagement, the conversion rate that happens when you tell stories versus and use their own words against them. I hate to say it, but it's really powerful. Saying, okay, smarty pants leader, let's go ahead and launch this really boring bullet riddled post on LinkedIn. And then let me rewrite it as a story. And we're going to launch it a week later. And let's see which one gets the most engagement.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, yours is going to rocket.
Yeah. I was going to suggest something along those lines. Like something that leadership and managers are less opposed to is let's try an experiment
Yeah.
and look at the data and see how it does. And yeah, you're right. That's a great way to do it.
You know, Ali, just to jump onto that, last week I was in Atlanta and I was doing a workshop for a large financial company. They brought all their people in around the world. And the one thing that I heard from one of the other speakers that I really liked is one of the most powerful words you can use, especially when you're trying to get a leader to change their mind or behavior or writing, is you're going to pilot it. They said that powerful word of a pilot gets
Right.
people on board and it gives you some latitude to say it may work, it may not work. But when you go in and you're going to do an A/B test, say, let's just pilot it. From what you've done here, let's pilot a story and see what happens. I just
love
thought that was kind of fun.
I love that. We have a question from Nancy, and if you guys have any other questions, be sure to get them in the queue. You will be
Heck
next
yeah.
on the list. This question from Nancy says, do you have suggestions for writing ABTs for people who provide services? I'm an estate planning attorney, and oftentimes people are afraid of what I talk about. Do you have suggestions?
Freight, that's interesting. I'm going to Vegas tomorrow. I'm working with a company called Ren, and they're in the financial planning, especially in the donor advised funds world, helping financial planners just like yourself
I
bring
think she
in a
said it.
philanthropic approach.
Yeah, I think she said estate planning.
Same thing,
Oh,
estate
okay.
planning. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it plays into estate planning. So, how do you do that? Is if you really want to stand out, here's what I want you to do. I want you to identify who's your number one audience. Who is, to be as specific as you possibly can. What do they want in their estate planning that you can obviously provide for them, and why is that important to them? I want you to articulate that and write that down. But why don't they have it? What's that one major, sticky, ugly, frustrating problem that you can solve for them better than anybody else? I want you to write that down. Then, therefore, I want you're therefore in two parts. Therefore, get them to imagine what a future would look like if they had their estate planning set up properly and how you would do that for them. When you start writing that out and find the humanity in that ABT, you're going to start finding your voice and what it is that you stand for that makes you different from all the other estate planners out there. Because you, of course, are in a highly commoditized world as well. But most estate planning people, most financial planning people, most lawyers, they get stuck in logic and reason. They spew out a bunch of numbers. And I pose the question to you, what is the first syllable in the word numbers? Num. They mean nothing to us unless we place them in the context of a human-centered story. So your exercise would be do the ABT just as I outlined it right there for yourself and see if you can't start finding that crystal clear message in there.
Yeah, that's great.
Can I give you another quick example, Ellie?
Sure, yeah.
If you got it, in the highly, highly, highly commoditized world of sales consultants and coaches, I mean, there's a gabillion of them. How do you stand out? Well, my good friend Alice Hyman has been a sales consultant for a long time, and we were working on her brand story, and I kept pushing her. I said, she actually is the daughter of the guy that helped create the Miller Hyman sales program. And she was actually the one that came in and actually documented the program and made it available through workbooks. So she has this pedigree and legacy of being an amazing sales consultant. And she's a great, great, very likable person. But she wasn't really known for anything beyond the Miller Hyman thing. And a lot of people didn't recognize the Miller Hyman name, especially the younger ones coming up. So the more I talked to her about this, when we start working on her ABTs, the more frustration came out of her. She kept saying, what the real problem with sales, it all starts with the CEO. The CEO is always the first person to point fingers at their revenue enablement person or their marketing officer or whatever, but they're all a symptom if the sales aren't there because the CEO has not done a good enough job of building the proper selling framework within the organization. And so she became the number one sales consultants to CEOs. And she begged the question, her ABT is something like, you're CEO of a robust company and you have remarkable opportunity for growth, but you're not growing because you haven't put in the proper frameworks to help your people sell. Therefore, imagine 4x, 5x, 10x growth when you work with me as a CEO to help you define your sales program. And then she can back that up with numbers that show up. And now Alice, known throughout the world, she's not coaching sales enablement people. She is when the CEO brings her in. Her number one audience is the CEO. And she's basically saying, if the sales aren't where you want them to be, it's your fault and nobody else's. Let me help you fix that. I think that's a really brilliant positioning in a very highly commoditized industry.
Yeah. We have another question from Finn asking, my agency provides social media growth, leads, and visibility for professional services like lawyers and accountants. How should I frame that?
Oh my God. I'm sorry, number one. Just kidding. Just kidding. Well, it goes back to you identifying who's your number one audience. What do they want relative to your offering and why is that important to them? But what frustration are they experiencing because of what major problem that you therefore are uniquely in a position to help them fix? Give you an example at a really weird, fun, interesting niche. There's an ad agency up here in Flagstaff, Arizona called Mountain Mojo, run by Rand Jenkins and his partner, business partner, Austin. And they were running, they had a lot of local business. They were building a nice, like 15, 14 person agency up here, but he wanted to expand. One of their main clients up here were the local independent hardware store owners, mom and pop hardware store owners, which there are still a lot of up here. But, they're getting encroached on by the bigger players. But he is showing them how to market to stay sustainable, to sustain their business. And they, of course, don't have a lot of resources to do it. So Rand did something really super smart for himself and his agency. And he has become now the nation's number one provider of marketing systems and services to the independent mom and pop hardware store around the country. And he's got a community built around them. He puts on leadership development for all of his customers. He connects all of these independent customers because it's them against the big guys. And he has built a remarkable business out of Flagstaff, Arizona, and is now known as that number one marketer in the hardware industry, for the hardware industry. So my question to you is, how could you be that person by getting super niched in a category that you are serving, which means you're going to have to say no to some other business, but become the go-to resource for that kind of law firm or that kind of accounting firm? Hopefully that's a good example that helps you.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that is it for our questions. Elaine says this was a lively topic and a fun presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Elaine.
Yeah.
And again, if they want to know more about the ABT and how to start using it, just have them go to businessandstory.com/ABT, and they'll learn a lot more about it.
Excellent. And I've got your email up on the screen. Park, thank you so much for your insight on today's training session. You provided a great overview of activating the storytelling flywheel to increase marketing momentum. And you just reminded people where they can follow you. You've got the website and your email there on screen. So just thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Allie. And I've got one parting thought, and that is, as all of your attendees here become more confident and persuasive storytellers using the storytelling flywheel, I want them to remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one a great one. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, don't forget, guys, you can let us know what you thought of today's session using the survey link below the video here. And be sure to check out the schedule page in the Society for details about what we have coming up soon. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you around the Society. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Allie.